just caught the word that the music wasn't musicking, so I'm going to correct that. Apologies, y'all. That was a deflating message to receive. So we're gonna remix this and try it again. Welcome everyone. We are going to get started momentarily. This is Tafari Melisizwe, the communications coordinator for the Dignity in Schools campaign. And though you cannot see me yet, you can now. I am going to reshare that so that we can begin how I envisioned us beginning. So hold tight and enjoy the music that I was enjoying while stuff was getting started. So here we go.
Live from across city, my city that's beyond what they call gritty. Pity the idiot think it's all pretty. Blitz the ambassador's back, spitting fire and brimstone raps. Your phone's tap, shorties clap at your ringtones. The return of the African attack, serving 6 consecutive sentences for severing a sick track. And you can quote my next lines verbatim. Charlie, Charlie, what with them? I bet you can't Google translate them. The last king of Scotland is Idi Amin Dada in Uganda. My people are screaming the hoodoo sasa, cause victory is certain when you're hurting. I'm Mike Magic and Bird, all on the same team, so you threaten. My phenomenal hand skills are here to stay. Never see I, even if you look between the letters H and J. I'm ready to win, you still in the game. I kill it again when I'm getting it in, and that's the fact. It ain't where you from, son. It's where you got. Charlie, 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 cause where I'm from, a defeat is hard to imagine. The spit spitter, the spit sicker than half your squadron. So have them call the ambulances. The ambassador massacre. Every rap verse screaming the masses. Anyone that have the aftermath will have to last without the rappers. Revolutionary broadcasters. I'm Steve Biko for the people. Fight to be equal. The African rappers survive. The lyrics elite. We see the American, we do American. I think I'm feeling, I don't know. I'm bilingual, you can't handle. I'm back in effect and I'm running up. And this is for my people in the cross city. Cramped in the internet cafe. Watching Blitz get the crowd busy. I'm Sugar Ray Leonard, independent. You should be offended, intended, descended, pretended you could defend it. But I'm international, putting Ghana on the map. From across city, top of the world, that's where I'm at. Charlie, 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 Charlie,
To the southernmost ocean, I boast for old traditions. While lesser men are comatose and frozen in a Polaroid, I play my own position. A couple times they kicked me out of school, even though I pay my intuition. Even though I pray for better days, when pops is locked up in a metal cage. Old Joes with the cornrows, ahead of braids on ahead of grades. Chasing greens and that feta cheese, instead of meditation to levitate. Some things you can't shortcut, the good word can't be paraphrased. So when you get a stain on your crown from fumbling down, pick it up. Brush it off as part of the process. God made us from the dust. It's called favor when stars shine a light on your dark fate to show you love. Even when you feeling low, you got your favorite.
All right, welcome, good people. Hello, everybody. Hope you could hear me and hear yourselves. Take two hopefully went better than take one with the audio sharing. And welcome to our national event for the National Week of Action Against School Pushout. For those of you that are new to Dignity in Schools, welcome. To those of you that are veterans, hello again. I am, as I said earlier, Tafari Melisizwe, Communications Coordinator for the Dignity in Schools campaign. We have a really fantastic event that we are going to get into. And before we go deep into that, I want to introduce our language interpretation team, Atlas, who is joining us today to facilitate Spanish language conversation and interpretation to connect communities of activism across language and region. Because of course, for folks that are not new to me, you've heard me say many times before that education justice organizing doesn't only happen in English, and not just in terms of critiques of systems, but building of movements and ideas that we can benefit from each other. And so I am going to toss it to the very capable hands of Atlas team to share interpretation things, and then I'll pass it to Lorraine and we will get started accordingly. Let's see. And if you can hear us, we cannot hear you. There we go. Right. All right, let's try that one more time. So in light of that, given that it is, I'm checking in, Robbie or Vivi, can either of you hear me? Or is it just me that's having audio issues? Oh, it's just me that's having audio issues then.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. I'm checking in with our interpretation team. If they can hear us? Let me check the line. Okay, great. So cool. So then we can get it started and get this movement moving on then. So for those of you that need it, and I definitely want to invite, if Aida is in the room or any of our other Spanish speaking colleagues to translate, as I say in English, what needs to be said in Spanish. That if you, and for our bilingual colleagues and comrades, then we can do that and then work accordingly. If you need language interpretation, we have made that available for this event. There is a globe icon on the bottom right-hand side of your screen that you can click on. And if you click on that, and it'll give you two options, English or Spanish. Please push the Spanish language or ES that you see there. And that will tie you into the live interpretation provided by Atlas so that we can dialogue and journey together. And with that being said, I am going to leverage the chat, and if folks need some support on the language side, please leverage the chat so that we can address any issues that we need moving forward. And Lorraine, I'm going to toss it to you to bring us into this thing, talking Sankofa.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tafari. It's so great to see all of you. It's so great to see all of you. And let me be the first to welcome you to Talking Sankofa, lifting up lessons of the past and discussing the challenges of today. If you don't know me, my name is Lorraine Wright. I am the executive director of I Vote for Me, which is a community-based organization here in Richmond, Virginia. It's premised on self-advocacy and the protection of human rights. And I'm really excited to be not only a part of this convening today, but a part of this body. And by this body, I mean the Dignity in Schools campaign. So I'm really honored to serve with this group of people and this coalition. And in the spirit of Sankofa, so for those of you who don't know, the literal translation or the meaning of Sankofa, it's an African word from the Akan tribe in Ghana that means to go back and get it, right? Another translation is, it's not taboo to fetch what's at risk of being left behind. And so today we really want to illustrate how DSC has partnered with an awesome individual and author, Mark Warren, to do just that, to go back and get it, make sure that we're representing history the right way, as told by those who actually lived it, and it was their lived experience. So again, I'm honored to be a part of this here convening. I'm honored again to serve with this group of people, and I'm grateful to be in space and community with everybody that's connected to this live broadcast. So thank you for joining Dignity in Schools and what is our week of action, our national week of action against school push out and the school to prison pipeline. And so in starting this discussion, really wanted to set the stage and the framework, right? So why did DSC think it was important to partner with Mark on this kind of project? Well, I think it's a complicated yet really simple answer. Number one is it really is a partnership. So Mark reminded me in a conversation we had not too long ago that he actually approached DSC with the proposal of getting together and partnering either in this way or some other way, however it worked out, whatever would be mutually beneficial. And the thing is, Dignity in Schools has a history and is really built into who we are as a coalition that we want to reconcile across all areas. So in funding, we want to make sure we're not taking money from corporations who don't represent the values that we profess or that we live. And conversely, in the same way, we are not going to partner with someone, an author or anyone else that's really not going to represent the values that DSC embodies, right? And what we know, what I now know about Mark Warren, having worked with him and another beautiful young lady, Mary Krebs out of University of Massachusetts, Boston, on this toolkit, the School Push Out Toolkit, is that Mark doesn't just speak the education and justice talk, he lives it. And so again, Dignity in Schools didn't just decide to partner with an author. We decided to partner with a true education advocate that had a history of doing this work with or without us. This just happened to be a good fit for both of us. And, if we're talking about fidelity to the process, then Mark represents exactly what DSC is about. And DSC, like I said, we struggle to make sure we're reconciling. Do we always get it right? No, we don't. But we're works in progress, and we want to make sure we align wherever we can. So hopefully that set the stage and that helped you guys understand a little bit about why we're even here today. So what I do want to do is now shoot it back to Safari for an icebreaker, get us a little warmed up so we can kind of go right into the discussion, because this is a really dope book, y'all, and I think you'll really like the discussion coming ahead. Safari?
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much for that, Lorraine. And so yes, no, I have I think an appropriate icebreaker when we are talking about this conversation of Sankofa, of going back to get it, going back to fetch it, and bringing it into the future and into the present moment. And so one thing I think we talk around a lot, but I think not enough about, is the people and the movements and the ideas that have inspired us to put some skin in the game, so to speak. And I think it's a great tool for collective learning to hear from other people. What are the movements, the notes, the things that inspired you and continue to inspire you to get into the movement? So in the various movements, be it education. A lot of times we are not single issue people because, of course, we don't live single issue lives. And so for the short icebreaker, I'm going to throw on a little bit of thinking music. And the prompt is, I want you to name, let me setting everything up to make sure I don't have any more audio hitches. And this is the prompt. It is to name one revolutionary movement, person, activist, organizer, or artist that you think social justice movements should study. So this is who inspires you, whose picture do you have on the wall, or whose quote do you find yourself often saying when it relates to your work and to the work that you are involved in. So I'm gonna throw on a touch of music and I'm gonna give us about 4 minutes to 2 minutes to put in the chat just names, movements, what have you. And this is the Cliff Notes version, y'all. Y'all can pull these notes and lessons, and then after this session, use that as a basis to go look at some things. Maybe there are names you're familiar with. Maybe there are new names that you're not. This can be an excellent opportunity to get familiar with other strands of the broader freedom movement. So I'm going to leave this prompt up. And I'm going to play some music, and then we will return in another moment. All right, good people, good people. We are back again. A movement person, artist, organizer that inspired you. I saw a lot of really, really cool stuff in the chat. Folks shouting each other out, shouting folks out. And again, I'm excited to see some names that I know, to see some ones that I don't know. And what that really tells us is that, folks have been right about these things for a long time. That there are a lot of really good organizing that we call upon, from Steve Biko to Fannie Lou Hamer, Baker, Dolores Huerta, who else? I am seeing Asada Shakur, another Dolores Huerta, Violeta Parra, and Victor Hara, yeah, good stuff. Black student movement of the 70s. Myself, yes, write yourself into history, Delia Perez. I dig that. Miriam Kaba, Esther from Kofi, uh, Kwame Ture, Maurice Bishop, Malcolm X, ANC. So yeah, we see we're international movement, international people. We can draw on these. Lynn Morton, yes indeed. And so Lorraine, as I get ready to toss it back to you, um, and I know you threw a couple of names in the chat as you transition to start to chat with Mark about his book. I would love for you to just share, yeah, who's of those names that you saw or heard or wrote, who one of them that speaks to you, or maybe someone that's not mentioned, and then take it away.
Well, it was absolutely Asada Shakur. And I pointed because she's right here up on my wall. And yeah, she's absolutely one of the revolutionaries that I look up to. And her quote just resonates with me on so many levels. So when we say it's our duty to fight for our freedom, like across all areas, it's our duty to fight for our freedom, and not just in education justice, but everywhere. And so Asada Shakur is really near and dear to my heart. So thank you for that. That was a real dope activity. It got us moving. And as usual, Tafari, DJ skills, mix master Tafari Melisizwe on the ones and twos. You're always doing it and making sure we're entertained. So thank you for that. So introducing the book, Willful Defiance, right? So Mark is going to talk about the book. I'm just going to talk a little bit really quickly again about why I so believe in this body of work, right? So oftentimes, and I can only be real, that's just how my DNA is set up, right? And so oftentimes, or sometimes, I won't say oftentimes, right? But sometimes we are in positions with our white allies where sometimes patriarchy comes into the mix, right? And it feels like we're being told how to fix our issues, how to realign, how to get some equity here. And this wasn't it. Mark, like true to form from start to finish, it was all about the impacted. And when Mark came to Richmond, clearly we had an agenda because we wanted to make sure it was an effective use of his time while he was here, limited time he was here, in our time. But he wasn't so stuck to the agenda where he couldn't kind of move organically in order to capture real stories and real narratives. And we had to do that the very, very first day when Mark accompanied us to a school, a disciplinary meeting where a young man had been dragged by SROs through the mud. He was less than 100 pounds through the mud. There was mud in his underwear everywhere. And we were in this meeting and Mark saw the apathy of the school district firsthand. And I think he was stunned, didn't really even know what he was witnessing. And the thing is, the national sort of, organizing and the national work is really bolstered by these individual stories. And at every single juncture, Mark stood back and said, I want you to tell me the stories. I want you to tell me what your perspective is. Let me just document. And then he come back and check. Did I get it right? Was this it? Is this an accurate depiction of what we spoke about? Because I want to make sure I get it right. And that's like so critically important to the authenticity and the integrity of the work, right? We create safe and courageous and audacious spaces, right, for the impacted. And Mark is doing just this. And this work and this collaboration is really a good demonstration, at least for me, that Mark really gets it. And he's committed to the work and he's committed to making sure the impacted are telling their story. So with that, I'm going to toss it right over to Mark Warren, professor, doctor. Look, and I know that you don't even have all those titles right now, but I really see you in those professional capacities because you're a master of what you do. And so I thank you for always at every juncture making sure we, the impacted, were okay and represented the right way in your book.
Oh, well, thank you, Lorraine. That's very powerful. I really appreciate that. That's what I've been trying to do. And so it's very meaningful and gratifying for me to hear this from you. And also to be with DSC today. This is a long time coming. Lorraine mentioned that I reached out to DSC. That was actually 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago. And DSC set up a subcommittee to meet with me. that Lorraine became part of, but there were 5 or 6 other folks on it, and actually met with me for an entire year before agreeing to let me partner with you all to do this kind of participatory research and this book. So I think it's been, and then since then, it's been a long process of building relationships with you all, visiting you all in various places around the country, going to the national meetings, partnering on a toolkit together. So I just want to give the sense that this is a book, and it's a book we're talking about today, but it's really a partnership that's had a lot of different pieces to it and products from it. And I think at the heart of it has been, our relationships, and that's not ending when the book ends. I want to be part of the DSC family going forward, and look for new ways that the work I do as a scholar and a professor can actually not be sitting from afar, but be work that really does support the building of a movement for racial equity and educational justice in this country. So with that, I wanted to give you a little sense of what the book is about. It is a 300 and something page book. So I only want to spend about 10 or 15 minutes talking about it. And I know we're going to dig into different aspects of it and themes that are in the book in some of the breakout rooms. So let me try to share my screen. If that's going to work. Oops. So the book opens up with the story of Zakia Sankofa, who I think a lot of people know. She became the co-founder of Racial Justice Now, coordinating committee co-chair, and a national field organizer for DSC for several years as well. But it starts with the story of her as a Black parent whose son, Amir, who many of you also know, I think, was pushed out of preschool, suspended and expelled on a number of times. And she had to drop out of college in order to, help take care of her son. But before that, went to the college library and started reading about education in Black boys, and discovered that her experience was not unique at all. And then she started talking with other Black parents in Dayton, Ohio area, found out that many had shared the same experiences, particularly parents of Black boys who were lively, imaginative, creative, insightful. And instead of being encouraged in that, were instead disciplined and controlled and pushed out of school. She helped co-found an organization called Racial Justice Now. And in a few years, that organization won a moratorium on pre-K suspensions in Dayton, changed the district's code of conduct and zero tolerance policies, won the implementation of restorative justice in 10 schools, and issued school discipline report cards in school districts across Ohio. But I do end that statement with a quote by her, which I do want to read just briefly. And she said at the time I interviewed her, "Amir is in the 4th grade now, and this school has been one of the most difficult. No matter what I do, I can't make the teacher see us differently. I can't make her love Amir. I can't make her see him as an energetic 9-year-old boy who has some leadership qualities that she could cultivate, instead of viewing him as a menace or a nuisance." I read that quote and I start this discussion with everybody about the book. And I think it's very important because it signals really a number of things about what this book is about, but a number of things about what this movement to dismantle the school to prison pipeline is about. It starts with the voice in the story of a Black parent. I also have the voice in the story of a Black boy high school student, also starting the book too, out of Chicago. And I think it's very important to center those stories, that lived experience. But the book is not mainly a story about how people have suffered at violence and abuse at the hands of the school to prison pipeline. That is the foundation of the book. But it's also the story of people who have become racial justice organizers, who have become change agents and fighters for educational justice in their schools and in their communities. And that's really at the heart of the book. It also includes that closing quotation, because no matter how many gains that this movement has made, which I document in the book, there's still their deep-seated, enduring racism in our public education system and our broader society, which the movement and its allies continue to be challenged and have to contend with. As far as the themes, it also raises the key themes across the book, which is really the answering this kind of question. You know, how did small, under-resourced community organizing groups like Racial Justice Now form together nationally and change the discourse decisively against zero tolerance and change policy and practice in districts and states across the country? And to answer that question, there are two themes that are right at the center of it. The vital importance of people most impacted by educational injustice being at the center of the movement, telling their stories, developing their participation and leadership, and challenging the school to prison pipeline at every turn. And secondly, the resources from a national movement, but one that was directed at supporting, spreading, and what I call nationalizing local struggles, not a movement that's focused, that's dominated by Washington-based professional advocates, but rather a movement and organizations like DSC that are devoted to lifting up, spreading, supporting the local organizing that's going on, and by doing so, strengthening that local organizing in ways that it would not be able to do otherwise. So I'm not going to talk too much about my own journey towards this project. Lorraine already mentioned the toolkit, but let me say that there were several strands that led me to this. I have been working with and writing about community, parent, and youth organizing groups, working around educational justice issues for 25 years. I worked on a project called, that produced a book called A Match on Dry Grass, and with Karen Mapp and a large number of students when I taught at Harvard. And at that time, we wrote about community organizing groups as just local organizing groups, kind of in a box. And maybe that was true at the time, but by the time the book came out, things had changed, and local organizing groups were finding their way to forming national alliances like the Dignity in Schools campaign. Maisie Chin actually came and represented DSC at the launch of the book that was about local organizing, and she talked about the national movement to end the school to prison pipeline. So I became interested in that. How could local organizers connect together to form a national movement, but one that wasn't going to be dominated by Washington-based professionals? Secondly, I had been out in communities hearing the stories of parents and young people about their experiences with school pushout, with policing practices in schools. And then at the same time, our own family became involved in the school to prison pipeline. Many of you know that I'm married to Roberta Udo, who is a DSC member, a teacher in Boston Public Schools, a Black British woman, and together we raised two Black biracial daughters. And when our older daughter entered middle school in Cambridge, Massachusetts, we started to see the school implement zero tolerance and harsh discipline against the Black students of the school, but not the white students. And we saw the school to prison pipeline unfolding in front of our very eyes. And it alienated Black students, it alienated our daughter, who had been a child who had loved school. And we started complaining about the racism that we saw in the school. And we were targeted by and investigated by the school administration for doing that. So we, of course, I believe we have more resources, I think, than many of the people who are featured in the book. Of course, I myself am white, but I share that because I think the school to prison pipeline is a vast phenomenon in this country, and it impacted me and my extended family and friendship networks. And so this is an issue that mattered to me personally as well. So as I say, I reached out, we formed this partnership, and I began to travel around the country. And first place I went was Mississippi Delta, Holmes County. And the book actually starts off with the experiences of Black families in the Mississippi Delta. You can see, some of you know Helen Johnson from her important role that she played in the work out of the Nolly Jenkins Family Center. And so I talk about how it was really in places like Holmes County in the mid to late 1990s that Black parents and students first started to name the school to prison pipeline and call for an end to zero tolerance and to policing and criminal justice practices that were criminalizing young people. And this is a really important and essential point. This movement did not start by the civil rights mainstream community in Washington. It did not start because of scholars like myself. The people who first started to talk about the school to prison pipeline and organized to challenge it came out of places like Holmes County, Mississippi, in the Black communities who were impacted by the history and current reality of white supremacy in this country. So I also chart the organizing that went on there and the changes that were made, not just in Holmes County, but in places across Mississippi. The next chapter then starts to move around the country. Joyce Parker, obviously there, that many people know, talking about there's no national without the local, trying to look at how the local organizing work was then lifted up nationally. So I go to South LA, where Black and Brown parents were some of the first also to name the school to prison pipeline, and in 2007 won one of the first big victories to get an entire school district, the Los Angeles Unified School District, to move away from zero tolerance and adopt school-wide positive behavioral supports. This was a lightning rod that inspired organizing around the country and led directly to the formation of a Dignity Schools campaign as an organization led by base building groups. So in a sense, the national movement has emerged out of this local organizing, but at the same time, the formation of these national groups then delivered resources down to local organizations. I go to Denver and talk about the pioneering work of Padres y Hombres Unidos and impact that had on the national movement. And then there's also a chapter on Chicago, where a youth organizing coalition called Voice and allies, including Kofi and other DSC members, were able to pass SB 100, the most progressive state legislation at the time, to end zero tolerance school discipline. I do treat, and I think there's going to be some discussion in the breakout room, the formation of the Dignity in Schools campaign. It did start mainly as a group of lawyers and professional advocates. And in a sense, it was taken over by base building groups who joined the group. And they argued that an organization that was dedicated to ending the school to prison pipeline had to have the people who are most impacted and the organizing groups working with them at the center, and that they needed to hold a majority on the steering committee. And that was a struggle to make that happen. And I document that struggle in the book. And once that occurred, I document the practices and policies that DSC adopted in order to anchor this organization and, in a sense, the larger movement in those local groups. And these are policies that many of you know and probably take for granted today, but were pioneering at the time they were adopted, that a proportion of funds raised would go to local groups, not be kept in Washington or wherever the national office was centered, that parents and youth leaders would consistently and always be brought to speak for themselves to meetings, whether it was in Washington or anywhere else, that the organization would focus on creating resources for local groups like the Model Code of Conduct, the toolkit that was mentioned, and it would be focused on lifting up and sharing local victories and strategies. This is not the normal way that national coalitions operate, that national movements operate. And I quote here in the book from Maisie Chin, who was one of the people who waged that struggle from Cadre. And she talks about that being the enduring legacy of DSC, that movements for social justice need to be anchored and led by the people who are most impacted and their organizations, and that it's a constant struggle because the dominant culture and the dominant institutional forces continue to favor well-resourced, well-placed professionals rather than parents and young people on the ground who may not have the same kind of education, who may not have those kinds of resources, but nevertheless need to be centering the movement. Okay, so there's a lot in the book. Go on to talk about the emergence of the diverse, intergenerational, and intersectional movement, work centering queer and trans youth, Black girls, girls of color, and gender nonconforming youth, gender nonconforming students. How do you create a movement that it isn't competition for who is most oppressed, but rather a both and perspective, that a movement that can address the particular needs and concerns and promote the leadership of various groups. And I talk about the emergence within that also of the police-free schools movement that we can talk about. It erupted, obviously, we know over the last year or two. Most people out of the DSC and the organizing world have no idea that the places where policies were changed first to defund and remove police from schools were the places where groups have been organizing for 5, 8, 10 years, laying the basis for those changes. I also travel around the country, and so there's a lot giving people a sense that this is a national movement. Some of you all are here. There are shorter pieces on Gwinnett Stop, on Families and Friends of Louisiana Incarcerated Children, on the groups outside of Richmond, Virginia. I take a look at teachers and Teachers Unite. We take a look at restorative justice as an alternative, some of the work of Kofi and also of Teachers Unite in that. So I'm just trying to give you a little bit of a sense. And I'm not going to go into detail here, but I think it's important for people to know that, 15 years ago, zero tolerance was the law of the land. It was in just about every school district code of conduct. It was in every state. It was the policy of the federal government. Every national teachers union supported zero tolerance. Every national education association in the country supported zero tolerance. When you all and your forerunners in this movement started this organizing, it was, people have told me, people thought you were crazy to challenge zero tolerance. There's no such, the federal government actually issued a statement in 2008, there's no such thing as a school to prison pipeline in this country. And all that has dramatically changed. And there were also a rolling series of victories, changing these policies at the local and state level, and serious reductions in suspensions and expulsions in places, especially where there's been organizing. I talk about LA a lot in the book. Went down 75,000 days lost to instruction in 2007, from 75,000 down to 5,600 10 years later. And beginnings to defund and remove police. Nevertheless, the enduring challenges, as we know, racial disparities themselves haven't changed at all, even though the numbers are down. The whole struggle to create authentic restorative justice alternatives that truly transform the culture of teaching and learning and relationships at school, where parents and young people are put at the center rather than being disciplined and controlled, and persistence of police practices and new forms of surveillance. So let me just end on that note. I come back at the end of the book to talk about some of the pioneering aspects of this movement. Now it may be quite accepted that movements should challenge racism explicitly and directly. That wasn't the case 20 years ago. Organizers were told, don't talk about that. Parents and young people were told, don't talk about racism. That's not going to get you what you're looking for. And this movement was one of the first and path-breaking in doing that. And as I say, coming back to these larger themes, I think really did play an important role in what is now a much more accepted and appreciated perspective that people who are directly impacted by the issues at hand need to be at the center of making the change that we want to see. So I'm going to leave you with that and look forward to our conversations today in breakout rooms and hopefully going forward in the future. So thank you so much again for welcoming me and partnering with me in this important work.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark. Hopefully you guys got a better understanding of the book. And now what we're going to do is, because we want to make this really interactive, right? And we really want your input, because I think this is always an ongoing learning process, right? And so we're going to move into workshops and kind of small group transitions. And I believe, Tafari, are you going to facilitate that sort of that breakout?
Yes, I am. And so hello again, wonderful people. Thank you, Mark, for that great introduction and framing. I will share my screen so you can see. This is what we have. Some of the folks that Mark mentioned in the his description and layout of the book are present here. So, we got players from the team in the game. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's exciting. So, and I do want to give them a chance to each just kind of like say hello, because we haven't got the chance to kind of say hello to each other yet as a collective. So I'm going to explain what we're going to do. And as I do that, I'll bring folks up to say hello very quickly. But yes, as Mark and Lorraine said, we are going to transition into small workshops. And the cool part about this is you get to self-select where you would like to go. And before I open the rooms, I'm going to talk a little bit about what they do. And we'll be in there. Originally, we said for 45 minutes, we'll kind of check in. We'll keep that and then kind of check in with each other. And definitely want to let folks know if you do need to leave early. Of course, this event was scheduled from 2 to 3:30 Eastern. If you do have to leave early, please, we totally understand that. Definitely take care of yourselves. And we may end up ending a touch later than scheduled, but I think if you hang out, it'll be worth it. And so to kind of do some of these deep dives that Mark was talking about, these are the workshops where you can do deeper dives. So one, and I'm going to bring Natalie and Ruth up to the fold from DSC National. They're going to be doing a small workshop talking about the history and formation of DSC, membership policy, how organizations in different spaces throughout the United States work together to produce a national education justice movement, and what that process looks like. And so Ruth and Natalie, if either of you would like to say hello, feel free to say hello. There we go. Voila, voila, voila. Then, as you heard, Lorraine Wright, our colleague, comrade, and co-host in charge, she's going to be leading a workshop on local and national relationships, how national supports local and vice versa. So how do we make sure that resources and effort and energy, like Mark was saying, doesn't just end up hyper concentrated in places like DC or New York, or major cities at the expense of rural and urban communities and just on the ground grassroots folks. Lorraine will be talking about that. So Lorraine, you can say hi again, though they've heard your voice.
Hey y'all, and Safari did a great job of summarizing. That's exactly what we'll be talking about. So come on over.
Indeed. And next, we're going to have another workshop on intersectional organizing, girls of color and gender nonconforming students. And with that, we're going to have the incredible folks down in Durant, Mississippi. We got Kanisha Smith from Nally Jenkins Family Center, who is in the fold, who will be leading a workshop on that. You want to say hey, Kanisha?
Hello, everyone. If you want to learn about our work at NJFC and rural organizing and working with girls of color, but also students of color in low-income communities, how we do it, our session.
Indeed. Glad to have you. Glad to have you. And then we are going to have Gina Womack from Families and Friends of Louisiana's Incarcerated Children, organizing in the South and organizing in the suburbs. And being in New Orleans, you got both of those things combined. So Gina, thank you so much for being here, and definitely just want to give you a moment to say hey if you want to say hey as well.
Everyone, thank you so much. Looking forward to folks that want to join and learn what's happening in New Orleans and in the South. Thanks.
All right. And then last and certainly not least, who you've heard already at length, Mark Warren is going to do a deeper dive and continue this conversation around really the work of community engaged scholarship and education movement work. And so what I'm going to do now is open the breakout rooms and facilitators. Yes.
So I think you skipped over the restorative and transformative.
Oh, you know what? I read it in my head. You're okay. So right, because I read it in my head. Thank you for that. Excuse me. So Lynn, my apologies. How could I not forget? How could I forget about the restorative and transformative justice work that Power Pack in Chicago, Chicagoland area has been doing for years, holding it down and lifting it up. Karen Lynn Morton, co-chair emeritus of Power Pack, is going to be leading a discussion and workshop on that. And Lynn, yes, please, if you'd like to jump in and say anything, by all means, with your nice hat.
Good afternoon, everyone. Don't leave me in the room by myself, okay? Although Tafari forgot about me. I'm just kidding.
Yes, be better than me. And so, all right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open all of the rooms. So you should get a notification that shows up that says, you can choose a breakout room. And the titles are of the workshop. So Formation of DSC is with Natalie and Ruth. Local and National Relationships is with Lorraine. Intersectional Organizing is with Nally Jenkins. Organizing in the South is with Gina. Restorative and Transformative Justice is with Lynn. And I see folks already moving there. And Community Engaged Scholarship is with Mark. So if y'all can please start moving. And if you need some support, I can also help move you. And what does this mean for people in the who have tuned in via YouTube and Facebook? Should have registered so you can come kick it with us. And we want to say, definitely a huge thanks for y'all to jump in and check us out. But this part, we are not able to broadcast the breakout rooms and really want to give folks an opportunity to do, deep and collective work and deep and collective conversation over the next 15 to 20 minutes or so. So, the next 30 to 40 minutes or so. So if you want, it is not too late to register. You can go to our website, dignityanschools.org, and register and jump in and say, hey, I want to join the breakout. And we can put you in one. So, and then for our Spanish speaking colleagues in the workshops, we are actually going to have everyone hang out in the main room here and have the opportunity for you all to discuss with each other what we've talked about so far and other issues that are pertinent as you see them in your line of work. So I'm going to be quiet unless there are any questions to field. And as I do that, I'm going to stop the live streaming. So thank you, YouTube and Facebook people who have been checking us out. And stay tuned to join us on Twitter and our other social media outlets to find out more about how you can join the Week of Action, because it's really a launch pad. And also to join some of the other cool things we have coming up, like a Willful Defiance book club and reading group, and a few other things. So if you're interested, definitely visit dignityanschools.org. And for those of you that are in the Zoom room proper, you will get a deeper dive into that information as well. So thank you all online, and we will catch